Next up, we have Dr. Sarah Bartell, who got her degree from Catholic U, right? And she's going to speak on the principles of the Catholic social teaching via the family. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Okay, so our ultimate goal in everything, including our study and promotion and engagement with Catholic social teaching, is transcendent. Our goal is life in Christ for the full human flourishing of all. Christ reveals us to ourselves. John Paul II never tired of quoting these lines from the Vatican II document, Gaudium et Spes, in just about every encyclical apostolic exhortation that he wrote. He quoted these two phrases: Christ reveals man to himself. He reveals the fullness of who we are called to be, and the meaning of our life is revealed in self-giving. So that's going to be at the heart of what I'm going to discuss as I look at the two great pillars of the good news that is Catholic social teaching, which are the dignity of the human person and the common good. And I know Professor DeWolf just mentioned these, but we will elaborate on them and look at them through the lens of the family.
Sarah?
Yes.
You do a great job of giving voice to your ideas, so good that you're too close to the microphone.
Sorry.
It's perfect for John Geis. I'm not sure what that says about John Geis. Communicate well, but if you could either
Back off.
a little bit.
Okay, how's that? Is that better? I don't want
That's perfect.
to blow up your mic there. Great. I've got 4 girls at home, ages 10 through 1, so I'm used to projecting to make my voice heard in the chaos. Is that doing better there? Okay, great. Okay, so the family is critical both to the human person and to society as a whole. It's the natural point of intersection between the two. My presentation this morning will be in some ways a little sneak peek at what Vocare chapters throughout the state will be learning in February when they study Chapter 5 of the Compendium of Catholic Social Teaching, which is Family, the Vital Cell of Society. In addition to pertinent passages from Scripture, this chapter of the Compendium pulls together and summarizes some of my favorite magisterial documents. This is my area here. So things like Gaudium et Spes, the Vatican II document, particularly Chapter 48, which is all about the theology of marriage and family. Humanae Vitae, which I hope you've heard of, right? John Paul II's 1982 apostolic exhortation, Familiaris Consortio, which has been called by some the Magna Carta of the family and of the domestic church. Also his 1994 letter to families. The Catechism is a source the compendium draws from as well as some addresses from Pope Paul VI and others, and the Holy See's Charter of the Rights of Family, which came out in 1983. And then many of the social documents, like Rerum Novarum, Laborum Exercens, Quadragesimo Anno, and some documents that the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith put out about the dignity of the human person, especially at its earliest embryonic stage, where it's vulnerable to a lot of manipulations. So the CDF document Dignitatis Personae was something I studied in my bioethics courses in grad school, talking about what is licit and illicit when you're dealing with the human embryo. And then a more recent instruction from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith that came out, which is Personae Humanae, came out in 2008 on December 8th. I thought that was beautiful. The church chooses these important feast days. That's a feast of the Immaculate Conception of Mary, so how appropriate when we're talking about life right after conception. So in these documents that the compendium pulls together, there's a lot of truth, beauty, goodness, richness, discussing the meaning of human life, the dignity of the human person, the meaning of family, and the family's role in society. In our world today, unfortunately, there is a lot of bad news for the human person, marriage and family. And since I'm going to discuss how Catholic social teaching, particularly regarding the human person and marriage and family, intersect with the current public sphere, I'm going to mention many examples of this bad news. But each of these are also challenges and opportunities for us to bring the good news of the gospel in our day to our current historical situation. We have the opportunity to bring this light, hope, this rich meaning and truth to the people of our time, and to transform our society. That's our call, what we're called to, our vocation. Here we are in Vocare, learning about our call to engage the society that we're in. So we do this in, with, and through the love of Jesus Christ, in cooperation with the Holy Spirit, and for the glory of God the Father. So that is to say, we do this with love. I will start by briefly discussing the dignity of the human person, its meaning and value in Catholic social teaching, and with a special eye to the place of the human person in the family. And then I'll mention many of the assaults on human dignity, the attacks on the human person that we see today, that we are called to actively challenge and engage because of our Christian faith in the value of human life. Then we'll turn to marriage and family, and I'll sketch a brief portrait of the value, the goodness, and the role of marriage and family according to our faith's understanding of it. And then, sadly, I'm going to follow that with a downer litany of the many attacks on marriage that we're called to engage. But we'll end with a note of hope because, of course, we have the love of Christ with it, which impels us onward to bring hope, light, and meaning to this darkness. What is the value of human life? What good is it? What does it have to do with marriage and family, too? So first of all, when we think about the beauty, the dignity of human life, I know Professor DeWolf gave you a synopsis of that principle of Catholic social teaching. I'm going to propose to you an image, and that's the image of the Pietà that Michelangelo Buonarroti carved. That's in St. Peter's Basilica. As you go in the main doors, it's just to the right. Has some of you been there and seen it? Exquisite. Michelangelo carved this early in his career. He was as yet a relatively unknown artist. But he visited the marble quarries of Carrara for months. He looked at the stone, the marble, and he chose this block, which he said was the most perfect block of marble. And out of this stone, his vision, his artistic, vision there wrought this incredible work of grace, poise, symmetry, harmony, balance, proportion that communicates a meaning. You see Our Lady's love for her son, her acceptance of his death, her yes, her fiat lived out, at the foot of the cross there, and our Lord's offering of himself as he lays in Our Lady's arms, just beautifully rendered out of this stone. It was a complex subject to undertake. Multi-figure statuary was not a big thing at that time in Renaissance art. This was really groundbreaking, and he knew that he had done something really incredible there. He refined it to a very high polish. Of all of his statues, this is the one that he polished to the highest gloss. One day, a group from Lombardy was visiting St. Peter's, where the statue is set up, and was discussing this incredible statue. Michelangelo was there, and he heard them discussing. Well, who did this? Asked one of the visitors. Oh, Argubbio from Milan, came another. Well, that night, Vasari, the art historian, tells us, Michelangelo entered St. Peter's Basilica with his chisel. One last time, he approached the statue, and right across the sash on Our Lady's chest, he wrote, let's see, I'll read you the Latin. Michelangelus Buonarrotes Florentinus faciebat. Michelangelo Buonarroti, Florentine, made this. He wanted the world to know this was his. No mistaking. Afterwards, he repented of his pride, and he never signed any other work of his. But this one, which really is, in many ways, his ultimate masterpiece, this one, he signed his own name right on the front. We are that masterpiece. God signed us with his own image. He didn't write his name on us. He wrote his image in us. We're created in the image and likeness of God. We are his. Let no one mistake it. The master artist created us, carefully considering the matter that he would make us out of, the form, the meaning that we would express, the purpose that we would be made for. We are complex, intricate, and every one of us is unique, precious. We have our origin from God's own hand, from the hand of the master artist, an eternal, transcendent destiny to live with him in love forever. This is why human life is precious. It's important to keep sight of that when we're discussing philosophical principles, that this is living, breathing, colorful, and beautiful, what we are discussing here. Each human life, at every stage, every level of ability and health, is a unique, unrepeatable, inviolable expression of God's creative love. Our life is precious not only because he created us and we have our destiny with him, but because Christ died to redeem us. So the U.S. bishops declare every human being is created in the image of God and redeemed by Jesus Christ, and therefore is invaluable and worthy of respect as a member of the human family. Every person, from the moment of conception to natural death, has inherent dignity and a right to life consistent with that dignity. Human dignity comes from God, not from any human quality or achievement. So the right to life, it's foundational. It's the prerequisite for enjoying any other right. The right to life of each person is a precious value for all of society, and it's intrinsically bound up with the good of society as a whole. So I'll go through the downer litany of assaults on human dignity and the value of human life, more or less in chronological order from the view of the lifespan of a person's life. So this is very clear, and we all are familiar with the astounding and staggering and widespreadly accepted attack of human life that is abortion. Perhaps the issue that most often leaps to mind when we discuss the social implications of Catholic belief in the sanctity of each human life. When Pope St. John Paul II first visited the United States in 1979, he addressed our country at the National Mall in Washington, D.C., with these words: "If a person's right to life is violated at the moment in which he is first conceived in his mother's womb, an indirect blow is also struck at the whole moral order, which serves to ensure the inviolable goods of man. Among those goods, life occupies first place." Or, as Mother Teresa put it when she came to the United States for the 1997 National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C., she said, "What is taking place in America is a war against the child. And if we accept that the mother can kill her own child, how can we tell other people not to kill one another?" The Pietà was attacked. You know that, right? In 1972, a crazy Hungarian geologist attacked the statue with his geologist hammer, declaring, "I am Jesus Christ." Mentally disturbed, possibly possessed, not sure what it was, but he did it. His chisel went, the chips of marble went flying, Our Lady's nose flew off. Bystanders collected bits of the marble, and some returned them, but not all, so Our Lady's nose had to be reconstructed from a bit of marble on her back. And now, if you go to St. Peter's, you will see the Pietà encased in a bulletproof acrylic glass case. Sadly, no bulletproof glass case protects the unborn. The closest we have is a glass of the ultrasound machine, which reveals the humanity of the unborn and most often protects their life when a mother sees her unborn child's living image on the screen. So, major gratitude to Diego Wendt and the For Us team that is raising money for ultrasound machines in crisis pregnancy centers. In the glass of the Petri dish in the lab, the human embryo is very vulnerable to manipulation and destruction. And this is what we have in the cases of embryonic stem cell research, which destroys a human person at its, one of its very first multi-celled stages, for therapeutic purposes, purportedly for others. Though, as many of you who are in the pro-life movement or just well-informed know, there's very little actual therapeutic benefit that comes from embryonic stem cell research. We have, is it almost 200? There are proven effective therapies from adult stem cells. One from embryonic stem cells just recently, finally came out, was now they can do some therapy with macular degeneration from embryonic stem cells. But regardless of its effectiveness, it is completely illicit to kill, to do evil that good may result, right? This is what you learn at, the intro in any moral theology class. Never is it acceptable to do good, to do evil that good may result. You can never kill some, even if they're very small, so that others may benefit from them. Personae Humanae and Dignitatis Personae, those two Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith documents I mentioned earlier, they catalog many of these illicit destructive interventions on human life at its very first stages. So there's somatic cell nuclear transfer, cloning, which was recently successfully done in Oregon in 2013 and California in 2014 with humans. So we've cloned human embryos to very early stages. So far, none of those embryos has been implanted in a woman's womb and brought to birth, but it will be a matter of time probably, unless there's a huge public pressure to prevent that from happening. The National Catholic Bioethics Center observes that advocates are quick to point out that stem cell research is about helping those who are living. That's not quite correct. Certainly, adult stem cell research is about helping the living. Embryonic stem cell research, on the other hand, is about destroying some of the living, namely those who are still young and vulnerable as embryos, in the name of helping others who may be struggling with diseases. So in fact, what we have here is essentially the creation of a new slave class of human beings, whose existence is subordinate to the well-being of those for whose therapy they have been created or destroyed, or both usually. We'll address slavery of the born in a little bit later on, but before we leave the embryo, let me just mention that the reason that in vitro fertilization is illicit is not only because of the problem of leftover embryos. Here in the United States, we have thousands of embryos who are just lingering in cryopreservation. Their legal status is very unclear. It's interesting, in Germany, they are very careful about the legal status of their frozen embryos, having a history of grave human rights abuses from their sad chapters of history. But here in the United States, those embryos are very vulnerable to other people's exploitation. So that's one huge problem with in vitro fertilization. But the very process of removing procreation from the loving bodily union of husband and wife where it was intended, separating it, and having that take place in the lab puts the human person that's thus created at a different status in some senses than those of us who are naturally procreated, because they are manufactured because of the whim and desire of others. They are commissioned, as it were. The very process makes the human person a product of manufacture, commissioned to serve another human being's desire, or sometimes preference. When I was in grad school in Washington, D.C., I would be driving around in my car and hear ads. You'd hear a little lullaby, nursery music, and then the Virginia Center for Reproductive Technology would come on with their ad, and there they can use a process of sex selection to help you get the sex you prefer for your child when you do IVF through them. So you can determine whether you're going to have a boy or a girl. And they also offer a money-back guarantee. That's not what we as people should have, right? We are created gratuitously. We are an end in ourselves. But through IVF, we are serving someone else's desire. Usually, this is the desire to have a child, but increasingly, it will be the desire to use this person for the therapy of another, whether through total destruction, as with an embryo, or if we allow human clones to be born for therapeutic purposes. And these are thought experiments that we do in bioethics. We could have a class of clones on retainer so we could harvest their various parts as needed. We don't want that to happen. That's why it's so important for us Catholics to know what we believe, to defend the dignity of human life. Now, contraception and sterilization are also an attack on human dignity. And this is harder, I think, for the average Catholic to understand because of our history of dissent on the contraceptive issue and the widespread use of it. But if you look at the Church's documents and its teaching, it's because of the dignity of the human person that those acts which beget humans are themselves possessing of a dignity and sacredness, which requires that they follow their true purpose, their goal, their end. We like to say telos in philosophy and theology there. It's a Greek word meaning, the ultimate meaning that is achieved through an action. Frustrating that purpose imposes an arbitrary dominion over our fertility, and it is also an attack on our human dignity. Pope Paul VI wrote in Humanae Vitae that there are limits to what we can and cannot do regarding the power over our bodies and our fertility in the realm of procreation. And he wrote, "These limits are expressly imposed because of the reverence due to the whole human organism and its natural functions, in light of the principles we stated earlier." Now, lest we think that the Church cares only about so-called conservative issues like abortion or contraception, we should notice that in Evangelium Vitae, Pope St. John Paul II forcefully repeats the condemnation that we first saw in Vatican II of a whole list of other attacks on the dignity of born human persons. He says, "Whatever is opposed to life itself, such as any type of murder, genocide, abortion, euthanasia, willful self-destruction, whatever violates the integrity of the human person, such as mutilation, torments inflicted on body or mind," so can we think torture here, "attempts to coerce the will itself, whatever insults human dignity, such as subhuman living conditions, arbitrary imprisonment, deportation, slavery, prostitution, the selling of women and children, as well as disgraceful working conditions where people are treated as mere instruments of gain rather than as free and responsible persons. All these are condemned as attacks against the human person." In this encyclical, Pope St. John Paul II also made Catholic moral history by articulating clearly and magisterially Catholic teaching condemning the death penalty in most instances in contemporary society. Again, rooting and grounding that in the dignity of the human person. Much more attention has been given lately to the problem of human trafficking. That, along with pornography, are huge attacks on the dignity of human person as well that we are seeing just explode in our day. The conditions brought about by war and poverty, social attitudes that in some places deny education to certain groups like girls, for example, are also attacks on human dignity. And you should know, right, that the Catholic Church is the largest provider worldwide of education for girls. Access to health care, the freedom to marry, religious freedom, these are all issues concerned with the dignity of the human person. So this is where the rubber hits the road, where the principles intersect with the conditions of our time. What John Paul II noticed in Evangelium Vitae, what he observed there in 1995, and it's just increased since then, sadly, is that these assaults on human dignity, particularly what he addressed at greatest length in that encyclical with abortion and euthanasia, that these attacks have changed in character in contemporary times so that now they are systematized, widespread, programmatic, and have gained wide social acceptance based on a flawed notion of human freedom, which Professor DeWolf mentioned, and an eclipse of the sense of God and mind. So, to wit, right here in Seattle, we have the Gates Foundation putting the largest funded nonprofit organization in the world's resources at the service of expanding contraception worldwide. So we've got our work cut out for us. We have many opportunities to act, to use the principles of Catholic social teaching to engage. We are blessed with the ability in our country to publicly participate in society. We can march for life. We can write to Congress, visit them. My girls and I went into a couple of the our state legislators' offices after the March for Life this year, and were able to drop off a letter and a rose, and just be part of the political process by making our voice heard. Huge need for education in public sphere, and that's what's so exciting about Vocare, to be able to expand education about Catholic social teaching and our beliefs about the dignity of human life to those around us. There are many ways and many examples that John Paul II gives in Evangelium Vitae to work for building a culture of life, for acting in solidarity, accompanying moms in crisis pregnancy, for example, who feel isolated and afraid, as the Gabriel Project does. I know some of your parishes have that. Now we have that in our archdiocese. An example from my own parish that happened at a very quiet, hidden local level, wasn't part of any official organization. So this illustrates, some of the subsidiarity that Professor DeWolf mentioned, was that our coordinator for Hispanic faith formation for the children, who I see often, Rosa, she got a call from the church to go and meet with a family, and the teen girl in this family was pregnant and was all set to have an abortion. And Rosa talked her out of it, praise God. And our moms group at St. Andrew's raised money to provide this mom with, with some necessities, a crib. We gave her some good hand-me-down clothes and made a diaper cake. Have you seen those? Just make a little, it's like a tiered wedding cake made out of rolled diapers. So this is what we're talking about when we're building a culture of life. It's acts of love and service. It's helping those who are handicapped not feel ostracized or shunned, but being with them. I think of Jean Vanier's L'Arche program, which provides a home-like environment for, it is a home, but it's a family-style environment for those who have mental and developmental challenges. All of these acts of service which foster reverence and respect for human life at every age and stage, that answers John Paul II's call in Evangelium Vitae to love, promote, protect, defend human life, all human life. So now we're going to turn to marriage and family, which are critical for the human person and society as a whole. It's important to realize the human person, even though we talk about the person like as an isolated, abstract idea, never is. Human person always occurs in the context of a family. That's how we come into the world. That's how God came into the world, through a family. The human person is a gift of love, springing from the communion of love between man and woman, that is marriage, which creates family. The dignity of the human person is inextricably linked with marriage and family. So here again are some words from John Paul II when he addressed our nation at the National Mall in 1979. He said, "Human life is precious because it is the gift of a God whose love is infinite. And when God gives life, it is forever. Life is also precious because it is the fruit and expression of love. That is why life should spring up within the setting of marriage, and why marriage and the parents' love for one another should be marked by generosity in self-giving. In fact, when the human person is not rooted and grounded in community life, in family, in deep, enduring, permanent connection and belonging, they suffer an isolated, individualistic existence that begets a whole host of problems. That's why the church teaches that the family possesses and continues still to release formidable energies capable of taking man out of his anonymity, keeping him conscious of his personal dignity, enriching him with deep humanity, and actively placing him in his uniqueness and unrepeatability within the fabric of society." So I'm going to talk a bit about what the church understands marriage and family to be, and then the attacks on that. But first, I'm going to give you a little quiz here. You just heard Professor DeWolf discuss the principles of Catholic social teaching. And one of the things that the family is the first school of virtue, vital cell of society, and the first place in which we learn these principles, just through the organic, day-to-day, natural give and take of family life. So in our family, I mentioned I have 4 girls, and they're ages 10 through 1. We learn these principles of Catholic social teaching. So I'm going to mention some little scenarios that occur in our family, and I want you to identify which principle of Catholic social teaching this illustrates, okay? So it may be more than one.
Will there be a quiz?
Yes, this is the quiz. Well, you know, I don't keep the grade book. It's higher up authority does that. Okay, so for example, suppose theoretically our 10-year-old gets punished for her Mass time behavior and is deprived of her after-Mass donut. You know about the after-Mass donut, right? That is like the carrot that ensures good behavior during Mass. Her 8-year-old sister, out of sympathy for her plight, willingly forgoes her own after-Mass donut to kind of to live that with her sister. Which principle are we discussing here? Solidarity. Excellent, excellent. I started with an easy one. Very good. Good job. Okay, so yesterday was Friday, and in our house, Friday is our cleaning day. Each child has a job to do, an important contribution to maintain household order, and we all benefit from the house being clean. We all really benefit from that. Definitely. Yes. So our 8-year-old Kate cleans the upstairs common bathroom and dusts, and Claire, our 10-year-old, vacuums and ensures that all the bathrooms have soap and adequate toilet paper. Very important. This touches on two principles, which, at least.
I'm sorry, so your 10-year-old vacuums? Because I can't believe this in our name for that.
Just pretend it's a thought experiment. Yeah, she can handle that vacuum cleaner like nobody's been this. I learned this from some other moms who were having their 6-year-olds vacuum. I was like, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. So that's beautiful. They can take out the silverware. See, everybody has a contribution. What's that? Right. So what is this illustrating here? The miraculous. It's a faith, you know? That's right.
Solidarity, or subsidiarity.
Well, okay, we'll get to subsidiarity. But in a sense, yes, you know, I'm passing off the duties to the, the underlings. But common good, that's right. You know, there's a dignity to work, and they're learning that they're capable of work. I'm giving them a gift by teaching them to work. But it's serving, that's right. Well, they believe their allowance more than me. We'll get to that. So yes, it's serving the common good, because we all benefit from an orderly environment. And there's another one that focuses on the contribution each person can make as they participate in this work. That was your hint. Participation. Participation. Everyone is involved and engaged, right? Everyone has a contribution to make. Very good. Now, I mentioned the subsidiarity. Mark Shea brought that one up. And so this one's going to be a freebie for you. But let's see. Okay, so the girls love to use my husband's phone. My phone has games too, but I try to keep them in ignorance about that. But he lets them use his phone to play their games, like cut the rope, computer games on it. And they will squabble about whose turn it is to use Daddy's phone. And they'll come to me. She used it. She was just using it for an hour, whatever it is. And I will say, okay, you need to work that out yourselves. What's that? I'm not going to intervene and impose. That's right, subsidiarity. They can resolve this at the most local level. Now, I help them by teaching them problem-solving skills. You know, I tell them you could take turns, you could choose an alternative activity, whatnot. So I'm supporting them, but yes, it's subsidiarity, that they have to work this out at the most local level. I don't need to overexert my authority. Okay, now I have an extra credit one for you. And I don't know, I'm David DeWolf, I'm sure, studying law. He'll get this. If there are any other legal or philosophical folks here who've studied the basic levels of justice. But I mentioned that Claire is responsible, that's a 10-year-old, for making sure that an adequate number of rolls of toilet paper from the household's mega pack get to each bathroom. This is very important. Serious crises can result if this does not happen in a just way. What type of justice are we talking about here? Maybe by the end of your Vocare study, you'll know. Interpersonal? No. Yes, that's what I call distributive justice. That's right. The amount, a just amount for each space in a just way as well. Now, when the two girls are sitting in the back seat of the van and trading their holy cards, I do a lot of church stuff. I love church volunteer work, meetings, whatnot. I, give talks at churches. So we're in churches a lot. And they're okay with this because they go to the vestibule and find all the holy cards, and they have their stash. Each of them has their stash kept next to their designated seat in the back. And they trade them like baseball cards. So their, glossy embossed St. Therese is worth two kind of flimsy Our Lady Guadalupe cards. What type of justice is that? That's right. Sorry, it's wrong. Oh, well, they're exposed to holy images. So that's a commutative justice there. I think, yeah, because we're looking at equivalencies here. All right. Okay. Very good review of your principles of Catholic social teaching. That occurs first off in the family. The health of the individual and of society in large part depend on the health of the family. The family is it springs from the total mutual self-giving of man and woman, husband and wife, in marriage. Whoops, finding my notes here. It's ordered to the good of spouses and the procreation of children. So family is for not just adults, as we think commonly today. Family and marriage aren't just about mutual emotional self-fulfillment between two adults. Family is actually ordered towards the procreation of children as well, and towards the good of all of society. Marriage between a man and woman is unique. It's the only relationship that can, in and of itself, unite children with their mother and father. Children are a gift to marriage, its supreme crown. A society, as the compendium says, that's built on a family scale is the best guarantee against drifting off course into, on one hand, individualism, and on the other hand, collectivism. Because within the family, the person is always at the center of attention as an end and never as a means. So, when the church teaches, as we see in the compendium, that the health of the individual and society in large part depends on the health of the family, this is no joke. I've seen multiple studies in the social sciences. We've proved over and over again that marriage and family benefit people at every level. Their health is better. If you are a married person, you will live longer. You will suffer less illness. You'll recover from disease more quickly. You will enjoy better physical health. Married people enjoy better emotional health. We've seen again and again when we study, self-reported emotional health, the married people will say that they have more satisfaction in their life, they're happier, they're just less likely to suffer depression, less likely to commit suicide, less likely to suffer mental illness, long-term disabilities, back to the physical health. Let's see. Okay, so here's a study from the General Social Surveys from 1972 to 1996. I mean, this is good, solid, consistent research that shows that other factors held consistent, the likelihood that a respondent would report being happy with life in general is substantially higher among those who are currently married than among those who have never been married or have been previously married. Marriage is hugely beneficial for the church too, and I can't even start to go into, the implications of marriage for the church. But when we have less matrimony occurring less often in the church, that is affecting the health of the church as a whole, and that's what we have today. About, what was it? Okay, in 1956, 36 weddings were celebrated for every 1,000 American Catholics. In 2009, that number was 13. So we have a huge vocation crisis in the church. And it's not just with ordination, it's with marriage as well. Young people are increasingly delaying marriage, pushing back the average age of marriage by about 6 years since 1960. So in 1960, 72% of all adults age 18 and older were married. Today, just 51% are. 51%. So we're at about half of young adults are married, whereas the majority were in 1960. The benefits for children, this is really sad actually, but when children are raised with their mother and father who are married to each other, their physical health, their mental health, their school performance, their behavior, their future marriages, all of these are far better off than children who are raised by one parent, by parents who are not married to each other, so cohabiting parents, in the other type of family arrangement. And I brought some books that I will get out for you, but the social scientists have analyzed this data again and again, and no one wants to hear this, but it's consistently true and there in the studies that when a child is raised by one parent, they're much more likely to do drugs, to suffer delinquency, to suffer school problems. They're more likely to engage in promiscuous sexual behavior. Their future marriages are at risk. They're much more likely to be divorced or to suffer unhappiness in marriage. They're much more likely to be abused. And that's what just breaks my heart, that they are much more likely to suffer physical, emotional, and sexual abuse when they're not living with their two married parents. They're much more likely to suffer poverty. So the vast majority of children in our state and throughout the country who are living in poverty are living with one parent. This is huge for society. This has social justice implications. If we want to break the cycle of poverty that these children are part of, we need to promote marriage. There are environmental effects and consequences to being single versus being married. As Janet Smith in her popular talk, Contraception, Why Not?, points out, it's single women like her who are living in a household by themselves, who are using more proportionally of the Earth's resources than a family who is sharing a household and all those resources. So all of this really ties together to the good of marriage and family for society, for individuals. We see again and again, this big change since about 1960. Why then? What was it that happened right around 1960 that changed everything? Yes, that's it. The pill is the nuclear bomb that was dropped on the family. And I'm not even exaggerating. That is what has changed the game for everybody. This expectation, all the divorces that are inherent in the sexual revolution, which is fueled by the pill, the divorces between sex and marriage, between sex and procreation, between marriage and the unity of man and woman. All of these are brought about by the pill. Enabling the sexual revolution, this widespread acceptance of the idea that sex and marriage don't go together, that sex and babies don't go together, that marriage and man and woman don't go together anymore. So what we have in our Catholic teaching is the antidote to this huge problem that is causing child poverty, that is breaking people's hearts, that is causing their physical, mental, financial health. I didn't even mention the financial benefits of marriage, but they're also very clear and real and studied. So this is a treasure. This is a light in the darkness that we need to be empowered and confident to share. When I think of the state of marriage in our contemporary society, which is in huge crisis, I can't even use hyperbole to describe what a crisis it's in currently. I think of Our Lady at the wedding at Cana, shaking her head and saying to our Lord, they have no more wine. We're out of wine. We need God's grace. We need him to transform our society to bring the light and love and truth of teaching about what authentic love really is. Christ is here, and he's here in his body, which is the church, which is us. He is here accompanying the human person in her and his heartache over, being broken up because you've had, a series of one-night stands, or because your cohabiting relationship for 2 years just ended, and now you feel the same level of distress as a divorced person would. But, people aren't acknowledging that you should feel as broken up as you do. Christ is there accompanying all of us with our broken hearts and is ready to teach us how to be human, to reveal us to ourselves, to teach us how to love authentically. And so it's learning our teaching and sharing it that will enable us to do that. And I just want to close with a little quote from Scripture here. I was thinking this morning as I was kind of trying to dash off some morning prayer in the car while coming up here. You know what the church prays every morning? The dawn from on high shall break upon us. In the tender compassion of our God, the dawn from on high shall break upon us, to shine on us, on those who dwell in darkness in the valley of death, to guide our feet in the way of peace. That is what we need here in this realm of marriage and family, in this realm of the attacks on the dignity of the human person. It's God's light to compassionately and mercifully bring us back and show us the way to respect our dignity, to live authentic human love. And St. Paul writes in his letter to the Ephesians, if I can just find it, or does anybody have a Bible on hand? I know we're Catholic, but all the same, I just throw that out there. Okay, Ephesians 3:12, I believe, is what I want. Or did you find it there, Jim? Do you have was that a Bible I saw you with? Okay, is it, I kneel before the Father? I bend the knee?
3:14.
Okay, do you mind reading that for us?
Sure. For this reason, I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory, he may grant you to be strengthened with might through his Spirit in the inner man, and that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have power to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. God bless you. So let's be rooted and grounded in love, the power of Christ, who can, whose light is so much stronger than the darkness that we're in. Thanks, and God bless you.